and felt that the Americans would not be stupid enough to invade Iraq, because if you invaded Iraq, you would empower Iran. You would make Iran the hegemon or or the main power in the Middle East. And why would the Americans want to do that? Okay, so clearly Saddam Hussein was wrong. So 2003, the Iraq War was not a real war as well. So for the longest time, the Americans have not fought a real war. Now they're fighting a real war. And what we're seeing is the American military is not as strong as people believe. And the reason why is the military-industrial complex is first and foremost corrupt. It's not meant to fight wars. It's meant to steal as much money from taxpayers using just the justification of wars, right? So during the Cold War, it was not possible for the Soviet Union and for America to actually go head-to-head. So what they did was they invested in very expensive weapon systems that made them look good, which cost a lot of money, which was impressive on paper, but which really didn't do anything. Okay, so really it was about flexing rather than about really fighting a conventional war, and that's what we're seeing today in the Middle East, where America has all these really impressive air defense systems, right? The THAAD system, which costs billions of dollars. You have the Patriot system. You have the Iron Dome. I mean, it's all very impressive, but look how ineffective it is against the Iranian assault. And the Iranians have told us they're actually have yet to release their most advanced weaponry. This week has just been, the old stockpile of drones, of redundant missiles to soften the weapon systems, of the air defense systems of the Israelis and Americans and the GCC. And already Israel and the GCC are suffering massive casualties and massive damage. What this war has shown us is that the world really is a mirage. It's a hallucination. What you believe to be true is not actually true.
I think many of us are somehow confused with the concept of Israel because, after all, Donald Trump wanted to help Israel, but it seems from what we've seen so far, you see no footages coming out of Israel. And then what is happening in Israel that nobody knows, because it seems that a huge devastation is happening and nobody knows what's going on. But from Iran, we know, as you mentioned, the footages are coming out. We know where they're hitting and what is the devastation that is happening in Tehran, for example.
Right. So there's a very good reason why there's no footage coming out of Israel. The reason why is Israel was completely humiliated in a 12-day war. Remember, Israel really thought that it would take them like a few days to destroy Iran because their entire strategy was decapitation, right? So they went in to kill the top leadership of the Iranians. And for the first few days, it was really impressive. They were killing these scientists, these generals, these officials, these clerics in their homes. And so that showed you the extent of the Mossad network in Iran. That showed you the extent of the advancement of Israeli weaponry. And it also showed you that Israel had complete dominance over the skies. And this happened because of the fall of Syria, right? So after Syria fell to ISIS, this created this air corridor where now the Israelis can just fly uncontested directly to Iran. And before Syria was the early air defense warning system for the Iranians. That's why they had invested so much in protecting the Assad regime. So in the first few days, it seemed as though Israel was on the brink of destroying Iran once and for all. But the Iranians proved much more resilient than anyone could imagine. And the Iranians started to fire back at the Israelis. And the Israelis were actually suffering a lot of damage, especially in Tel Aviv. And the images coming out of Israel were shocking and actually humiliating. And so the Israelis basically begged the Americans to come in and save them from losing to Iran. And that's why Trump and the Iranians sort of orchestrated or coordinated or choreographed this conflict, right? Where one or two B-2 bombers went in and blew up an empty mountain. And then the Iranians struck back and attacked an empty US base in Qatar. And that was it, okay? And that was the end of the 12-day war. And then if you remember, Netanyahu went to talk to Putin, okay? And asked Putin to do him a favor and talk to Iranians and said, listen, Trump says that we've taken out your nuclear weapons program, your uranium enrichment program, and that's good enough for us. So I promise you, Iran, that we, the Israelis, will not provoke another conflict. There will be peace between us. And Putin delivered that message. That was widely reported at that time. And we really thought that at the end of the 12-day war, we would have peace in the Middle East because the Iranians have demonstrated to everyone that they will fight back and they can fight back. And Israel doesn't have the capacity to actually destroy the regime, the government in Iran. Unfortunately, that's clearly not what they believe. And so what I think they understood is, you know what, we still want to destroy the government in Iran because that's part of the Greater Israel Project. But in the future, we'll just censor media. We'll just disguise the fact that we're getting destroyed by the Iranians, and that's what's led to this blockade of information from Israel. You're absolutely right in that there's a lot of destruction. There should be a lot of destruction in Tel Aviv and other places because we sort of like see the missile barrages of the Iranians, and they're quite impressive. But Israelis think that, like, if we just hide the fact that we're getting destroyed, then people will think that we're still invincible. Okay, so that's a response to the loss of the 12-day war. The Israelis is like, we just won't admit we're being defeated. But I mean, right now, Israel does not have the capacity to continue this war for much longer. It needs America to send in ground troops. And that's the situation we find ourselves in.
I don't know how capable the ground troops would be because they were begging Kurdish terrorist groups to do something for the United States. That it seems that the Kurdish people, I don't know who are living outside of Iran, in Iraqi Kurdistan, they're going to be part of it or not. But we've learned yesterday from Khan media, Israeli media, that Azerbaijan going to join us in this fight. I think they're trying you've mentioned you know the false flag operation, but we have false flag news coming out because Azerbaijan knows what at stake if they enter this conflict. It's not just about Iran. Russia would come in. The whole concept of South Caucasus would be in some sort of, Russia was fighting Georgia for before the war in Ukraine, started, and they know what's at stake, considering the South Caucasus and the case of Iran. And how do you see the whole concept? Because on one side, we know that they literally are considering ground invasion of Iran, but how capable are they to go that far?
Right. So, as you point out, the American strategy is to use proxies for a ground invasion, and that's what they did very effectively in Syria and Libya, right, where they finance these rebel groups and then support these rebel groups with air power. And that was very effective, especially in Libya, which really destroyed the government in Libya. Um, but the situation in Iran is actually much more complicated, right? So right now, the Americans are looking at three possible proxies. The first two, as you mentioned, are the Kurds and the Azerbaijanis. And the last group are the Balochs, which neighbors Pakistan. Okay, so that's the southeast corner of Iran. The Azerbaijanis and the Kurds are in the northwest corner of Iran. And the Kurds have a very long history with the Americans. The Kurds have been trying to achieve national self-determination for the longest time, and their best chance was actually in 1991, because at the aftermath of the Persian Gulf War, at that time, President H.W. Bush encouraged the Kurds to rebel against Saddam Hussein. And the Kurds did. There was a massive uprising within Iraq, and the Kurds really believed that now is the opportunity to finally build their own nation. But at the end of the day, what happened was that President George H.W. Bush betrayed the Kurds, and the promises of American air power to support their insurgency never materialized. And what happened was a massive crackdown. Saddam Hussein, I think, used it was just a brutal crackdown that killed hundreds of thousands of Kurds. And if you're the Kurds And you remember this, right? Why would you ever trust the Americans again? And this was not actually the first time. It's happened before, and it's happened like many times afterwards. So the idea that you're gonna give money to the Kurds and they're gonna rush in into Iran on your behalf, I think that's a fantasy. Okay, that's point number one. Point number two is the entire intention of using Kurds is as a cannon fodder, okay? So what you want to do is you want to mask Kurdish insurgents and send them into Iran. And then what will happen is the Iranian military will be forced to send in soldiers to counter this attack. And these soldiers will be masked, right? Which makes it perfect for aerial bombardment. But guess who else gets killed in this aerial bombardment? It's the Kurds as well. So it is. These are this cannon fodder, that meant to bait the Iranians into conflict so that they can all be destroyed. And the Kurds aren't stupid; they know exactly what's going on. And the reason why they seem as though they're willing to go in is because they can probably rip off a lot of money from the Americans and Israelis, right? They can probably get a lot of weapons, a lot of money, a lot of gold, and a lot of assurances from the Israelis and the Americans. But the idea that these guys are going to go in and sacrifice their lives so that Israel and America can advance their military objectives is just absurd. No one's that stupid. And then you have like Azerbaijan, right? Why the hell would Azerbaijan get into this war, especially because Russia's to the north, right? Why give the Russians and the Iranians the perfect excuse to split your nation into two? If the president of Azerbaijan is stupid enough to actually enter Iran with a ground invasion, I guarantee you that Azerbaijan as a nation state will not last very long. Russia is looking for the perfect excuse to come in this war to create a land bridge between Russia and Iran. So there's no way Azerbaijan comes into this war. But again, it's good optics, right? The president of Azerbaijan can flex, can huff and puff. The Israelis and Americans will pay him a lot of money. He'll take this money and give it to all his hangers on, all his supporters, all his psychophons. That makes him look good, okay? But the way these guys are not stupid, they're hustlers. They know exactly how the game works. They know that the Israelis and Americans are desperate for ground forces to advance their military objectives, and they're not going to sacrifice themselves, and they're not going to sacrifice their lives. They're not that stupid, but in the process, they can rip off as much money as possible from the Israelis and Americans, and that's exactly what's going to happen.
John, one of the main questions in the mind of the Arab states today is what is the benefit of American bases in our countries? And they're asking themselves, many people in these countries, wealthy people, are asking, what is the outcome of these bases if they're not defending us, if they're not, if we're gonna, we are attacked because of these bases. So, how do you see the Middle East, the outcome of this conflict, this war, and the influence that it already has on these Arab states?
Well, I mean, like, listen, for the longest time, these GCC countries had a devil's bargain, right? So the devil's bargain is this. You have these corrupt regimes supported by American military. The American military was not in these nations to protect the nation. It was to protect the royal family, to make sure the royal family obeyed orders coming from Washington, D.C. These GCC nations are really the linchpin of the American empire, where they sell petrodollars and then recycle these petrodollars into the American financial system. The AI bubble right now in the United States, it's completely financed by the GCC nations, right? The entire American economy now depends on the building of data centers, which are not very profitable and which are very bad for the environment. And so the GCC nations aren't able to finance the building of these data centers. The entire Ponzi scheme, this financial pyramid, this mirage of AI economy collapses. Okay, these ruling families are corrupt, they're arrogant, they're dictatorial, and they use these petrodollars in order to bribe the citizens as well. So if you're a citizen there, you get free healthcare, free education, free housing, a free job. You have nothing to worry about, okay? And then you import, um, um, you know, workers from India, from Bangladesh, from the Philippines, wherever to do the real work. You hire expatriates from Europe, from England to be the middle managers. And so they had a very nice deal for the longest time. And now what they're recognizing is, oops, our time is up. This devil's bargain is not going to last very longer. Listen. I mean, I don't want to be too rude, but I don't think there's a future for any of these nations after this war.
Yeah. How do you predict this war, going on and on? Do you see a long war happening between the Iran and the United States, which, a long war like what we are, because when the war in Ukraine started, we thought that it could be a short war, because you look at what Russia did in the eastern part of Ukraine, they didn't go that far. They literally captured the eastern part of Ukraine, mostly Russians, and they're trying to protect the Russian ethnicities and those people who are, even we have some other people, Russian ethnic Russians in Kiev, for example, in Odessa, Nikolaev. They're trying to do their best to protect these people as well. But when it comes to Iran, it has nothing to do with all of those concepts. The United States merely is attacking Iran because of its resources, because Iran is a independent nation. That's why they're attacking Iran. And I don't know how much of what they have in their mind is achievable right now with the current situation of the conflict. Because Donald Trump said that I want to choose. I am yesterday he said to, based on Axios, he said to the Arab states, I'm not looking after regime change. I want to choose the next supreme leader of Iran. This has a huge history for Iranians, because the Shah was replaced, was a coup against the father of the Shah of Iran. Then he was put in the place of his father because of the coup, British coup. And then we had the democratically elected Prime Minister Mossadegh in Iran, which was, there was a coup against him in 1953 to put Shah in charge again. They're trying to achieve something that they have lost it long before, and they're trying to reestablish the mindset. I'm talking, it's not the reality, but the mindset in Washington is the same as it was during those days, with the British CIA intelligence trying to make a coup d'etat against the government and putting some other people in the place of them without changing that much the whole system.